Podcast, where you'll learn and we'll learn too.
Hey everyone, back again. I'm Mike, and with me, as always, is Rory and Joy. Rory, what have you been doing this week?
This week, yeah, not a great deal. Just watching stuff, not anything really gripping, just regular comedies and crap. Yeah.
Regular comedies. What sort of comedies?
I've recently gotten into Workaholics, which
That's
is
the sort of a little bit vulgar one, right?
yeah, it's fairly batshit insane. It's not really anything massively complex or anything.
Yeah, so that's where they work and they get stoned and they make fart jokes, basically, right?
Largely, sometimes wizard rap.
Would you like to give us a wizard rap?
No,
No?
I'm not powerful enough of a wizard.
Maybe we'll get you drunk one day and you can give us a wizard rap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah,
okay.
it's been a fairly basic week.
Just work and chill.
Yeah, I've been out most of the time. Went to a jazz night. That was good.
Did you do jazz hands?
Yes, entirely.
Nice, nice.
But nothing in the realms of stories or their written form.
Well, you were reading a little bit. I tried to force you to read American Gods.
When I had 5 minutes, I sort of kick-started American Gods. I'm liking it so far. I've not delved into it enough yet, and I just haven't had the time to pick it back up and just sit down and go through it, apart from maybe directly after this. So,
yes.
Yeah.
How about you then, Joy?
Well, this week, I finished the book that I was reading, This Machine Kills Secrets, so try to get it onto a new book. I try to get a physical copy of American Gods because I like the feel of paper on my hands. I'm that old-fashioned.
I've got quite a few books. As you can see, a few behind me. I've got American Gods. It's about that thick. So I've got the longer copy. It's about 1,400 words more than the original release. But it's really, really good. I've got about halfway now. I didn't read much yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to, and in terms of television I've been watching, mostly a lot of CW, so Arrow, Flash, things like that.
So DC stuff then.
Yeah, Marvel TV, they're not doing so well, I'll be honest.
No, but their movies are good.
Oh yeah, their movies are amazing.
Well, what about, how do you feel about Gotham? Because I absolutely love it. I'm feeling like this was a lead question. What do you think? I don't know.
Well, now I've been put on the spot. Gotham, I think it's alright. I mean, Constantine for me is much better because Constantine is just fucking hell amazing.
I haven't actually seen it. That's something I have to look. So that's another thing I should probably mention. We're going to attempt not to do any spoilers, but I'm really bad for that. So
yeah, you are awful.
If I do, I'm really sorry. Oh dear. So anything else you've been doing? You did say earlier, Joy, that you were contemplating actually doing some writing.
Yes, I did. Contemplate doing some writing.
Did you have any ideas of what you were going to do, or? I'm guessing that's a no. He went quiet on me.
Yeah, I was actually on that. I was gonna write, and then something just happened on that day, and I'm like, well, should have written, shouldn't I? Shit. Yeah.
It's all right. Well, you've got your train journey tomorrow, so you better do it then.
That is true.
That's an order. So anyway, I guess I'll say what I've been doing. Obviously, it was. I'm a loved up guy, so I had Valentine's, which was lovely, of course. I know. That was a really nice night. And then after that, she basically went on holiday without me with a friend. So you know, that's true love for you. That is.
You were talking about how excited you were to get 2 days to yourself, just flat out reading.
Writing.
Writing.
not
Sorry, it's
reading.
the other one. It's the output, not the input.
Writing.
Yeah, no, anyway, yeah, I got a lot of writing done, lots of outlining done.
Yeah.
I got to even do a little bit of artwork on my map, which is getting there now, for the story. But I won't discuss any like world building. That'll be next week. So yeah, my book's coming on pretty well actually. I think I mentioned to Rory that I flipped. Originally, the protagonist grew up in sort of medieval Britain, but now I've moved it to modern day, and then the separate realm that he goes to, that's sort of medieval fantasy magic. So I like that sort of that difference in environment. So I decided to do that. So I had a bit of rewriting to do there as well. Apart from that, I started writing up a short story as well. Actually,
Ooh.
yeah, it's a bit odd. It's about a newspaper editor, right, who's getting all these sort of articles given to him, because obviously he's an editor, so he has to read through everything, and he keeps getting these anonymous ones that are sort of going through, and they're telling him about events that no one else in the news knows about, and it's like people like dying, like a serial killer stuff, and then this big bus sort of gets blown up, things like that, and he's sort of getting them like a few days early. But there's no sort of real specifics. It's explained like it's after the event without saying when and where. So it's all the information. So it leads up from that. So it's a bit interesting. Yeah. But I was basically writing because obviously I wanted some short stories for my mailing list when I started. So yeah, it's quite an interesting little thing. I mean, it's a bit different than what I'd normally write. Joy, it was you doing all your mystery stuff that gave me the idea of that. So that's sure. That's only about, I think it's only about 10K, something like that.
So when did that get spurred on then?
That was basically when I was writing my book, and then I was like, I want to have a little break, and I sort of went on and did it. It's not finished yet. I haven't finished it. So, but yeah. But I'll let you guys read it once I'm done.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So anyway, should we get on with the actual topic of today? All right. It's nice when you hear a response, guys.
I said yes. I hissed yes, actually, and I said go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So today is character building. So we're going to discuss that. Obviously, character development, and you guys can use references from your favorite books, movies, comics, whatever you want, really. But I thought I'd just go through like the processes that I think personally are quite good when you're sort of designing characters, that sort of thing. And then you guys, if you have any difference of opinion or you have any ideas yourself, just sort of jump in. So what I got here, I got my own little, as always, little notes. Yeah. So what I thought the first one, what do you want from a character? So when you're first thinking of the character, what do you want? And you guys might know like this sort of thing. So you've got a character who could be either sympathetic or not sympathetic. So whether you care about what's happening to them and things that have happened to them in their past, if you can sort of relate to that sort of thing. If another one is obviously if the character needs to be, is the character confident, not confident? I mean, so these are sort of.
Yeah, I quite like it where you're not told how to feel about a character.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something where a few people start off novels and stuff and they lay the character out for you and they just try and get you to like them because they're the main one and you're supposed to like them anyway, but it feels a bit forced. I like it when you just have a person and then they start doing things along the line that make you kind of go, do I like this person, don't I? And eventually you come to a yes or no, but I don't like it holding my hand telling me how to feel about the person.
That's right, so it's more what they do, what's happened to them in the past, and how they react to certain situations and conflict.
Yeah, just leave it for me to kind of find out how I feel as it goes on.
Yeah.
And from a personal taste kind of thing, I've noticed that recently I've enjoyed a lot more stories where I hate the characters.
Where you hate the characters, like all of them. So like Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes, they are all awful, awful people. But
they're
like, for
fun to watch.
example, Breaking Bad, of course, you're pretty much eventually led to start hating Walt, even if you've got massively conflicting emotions for him.
Yeah, but he's
And
pretty much the
that was
modern
great.
day Scarface, isn't he?
Yeah, and a thing I watched recently, Gone Girl. I don't know if either of you have read or
Oh
I,
yeah.
seen that.
I'm reading it.
Yeah,
Oh man. Don't
everyone
spoil
is
anything.
assholes.
Yeah,
True.
yeah.
I loved it, but everyone was assholes, and I was just left feeling
Yep.
annoyed at them in so many ways. It was great.
Well, that's good though, isn't it? If it's sort of inciting the emotion, I think that's quite nice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
what you want.
precisely, rather than just leaving me feeling ambivalent about something.
Yeah, but I think that's absolutely fine. It all depends though, what as a writer, in my case, or as a writer's sort of perspective, is what you want out of the character. If you want your readers to be really pissed off with this character and to hate them, that's perfect because
Yeah,
that's probably what was wanted. Like that was probably the idea. So that's why I've got these sort of the three sort of bullet points is sympathetic, whether or not they're sympathetic or not, whether or not the character is confident or not, and whether or not they're an active character, so heroic and all that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be heroic, it could be sort of violent and mean and stuff, but as long as they're doing stuff. If they're quite a passive character, that's the opposite, really. But I think to make it a character, you need at least two of those things to sort of encourage emotion from the reader. But I'm not saying it's like you said. I'm not saying actually force the person to feel in a certain way.
yeah,
Just sort
yeah,
of,
exactly. You've got to know how to build them up to that point.
yeah, I think to be a good writer or director or anything like that. Oh,
Yeah,
I went blurry then. To be a good writer or anything like that, I think you need to be able to figure out a way of developing a character in that way. But I think those sort of three bullet points are quite important, and then obviously it leads into whether or not they're likable and stuff like you say.
mm,
But that's something you should definitely let the reader or the viewer, watcher, decide themselves.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously you're trying to write somebody to be likable or unlikable,
Yeah.
but so long
But
as
it
you're
doesn't have
not
to be as
telling
obvious.
everyone from the onset. Yeah,
Yeah.
if your first paragraph is Benjamin was a badass at everything in the world, and he also ended world hunger, and just,
He's a badass. He ended world hunger, but he's awesome.
yeah,
You just, I was gonna say, you just made me think of like a good one though, in terms of for character development. Imagine the whole, as I say, Benjamin was a badass who was cured world hunger and did X, Y, and Z, and then along came something that broke all of that, made him humble, poor, and wretched, and then he had to start actually building up himself again.
Well, you see, I think that sort of leads to another sort of point about character development. You can't actually say if you say early in the book, if you say this person does this sort of thing, you can't just suddenly later on completely flip flop. People do change, but there has to be a reason for it. You see, so um, if he's this sort of really rich person, I mean that's quite a good idea. So he's really rich, and the story of him crumbling and falling and becoming this sort of really poor person, and then what happens from then. That's a story, but some guy being really rich and sort of being amazing and doing everything, and everything happens right for him, that's not a story, that's boring. But the fact that he's sort of fallen and he's really poor and stuff now, and there's that sort of difference between what he
yeah.
was and he knew that, and that's something you can really write about because you can delve into the emotions and you can sort of see that. But yeah, no,
It's
I
good.
think. Sorry, Roy.
I was going to say it's good when you got say like apocalypse just happened stories, and everyone's still holding the same values, acting the same way, entering this new world, and then the new world gradually changes them, rather than sudden personality flip or whatever.
Yeah, you're not. It's not
Yeah,
going to be like suddenly he's
yeah.
this really good priest-like person and he goes to church every week, and then suddenly he becomes a maniac who's cutting people's heads off the next week. It's not going to happen. It's got to be gradual, and some stuff has to happen that makes them
Mm.
turn that way. Yeah, it's
But if
actually.
even sort of like if even an apocalypse takes time to weigh in on people, Granted,
Yeah.
it'll go faster than many other events, but
Well, I mean, it's obviously when people are fighting over resources, that's when it shows their real nature, you see, I think. That's why
I was gonna say, have you
Apocalypse
guys
is
ever heard?
Carry on, Joy.
I was gonna say, have you guys ever heard about the story of Job in the Bible?
I've read some of it, but I
Basically,
haven't all of it. That's
oh
a
yeah, I
no.
used to be like super religious a long, long time ago, so that's the backstory covered. But anywho,
Super religious.
with Job, it's this. Yes, I actually gave sermons in church, but we're getting sidetracked. I keep on getting like weird story ideas whenever I talk to you guys, and this is what we're in the story of Job. Well, the devil and God, they basically find this guy called Job, and then they just test him because the devil is like, I can turn him against you, and God is like, Job is so nice, he would never do that. And it's like basically tragedy after tragedy. His children die, his livestock dies, and he gets sick and everything else. But he keeps on, the whole keeping steadfast to God. And I was thinking, in the whole, grander scheme of things, especially with yourself, you like your fantasy novels. Imagine the olden days with gods like Zeus who just actually play a yearly game like that with mortals, but still to this very day they find an unlucky individual, and then they
Yeah.
just twist him and break him, and then just to see what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think everyone's fallible, and that's one thing. You need to make people human. I mean, at the end of the day, if this guy was being completely tormented, all his family was dying around him, all of his livelihood was being destroyed, and and he's ill himself. I mean, you expect him to question it. Now, if he knew it was God who was doing these things, then he'd be like, piss off, right? But I mean, I wouldn't say someone should lose their faith just because this is happening. I mean, obviously, I'm not a religious person anyway, but what I'm saying is, you can justify that in a story that this guy's sort of staying strong and it's not changing him.
Yeah.
But well, I'm not saying it won't change him as a person, but I'm saying he doesn't have to bend.
It doesn't break him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, although it would a lot of people. But
Yeah.
So I suppose that what we're really discussing what my second point was anyway, which was characters have to change throughout the story based on all the conflicts and events that happen throughout. So, as an example would be if the two different events. So, one, if someone who the character's really close to gets killed, they might grieve and react in one way. But if this person has been kidnapped and taken away, and they can actually have a chance to save them, then they'll probably grab all what they can to carry and go for it. Similar to like in Lord of the Rings, with Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn going on.
You could have mentioned Taken. It's right there in the name.
No, I don't like that movie. I can't stand it.
What?
Good old in jokes. But yeah, no, I think people have to react in different ways, and I mean, it needs to feel natural. It needs to feel real, but it has to be based on that character and what you've built up as that profile. But there's no way that someone can be the same at the beginning. In Rory's example of like the post-apocalyptic example, he can't be the same prior to that as he is 10 years into the end of the world, and it's all barren and they're all fighting for survival. They can't be the same person. They need to change.
I was going to say, a good... No, go on, Rory.
Oh, no, you go first. I've got it in my mind. I know what I think.
With you two guys, you probably know the character, but there was this show called Revolution, which showed, the whole post-apocalyptic thing, and it had this character who's played by the same actor as Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. And it showed, the evolution... Huh?
I said he's brilliant, he is.
I know, but like in the show, they show his like progression from being a mild-mannered accountant just after the apocalypse had ended to being this ruthless guy who works for a militia who's manipulative, deceitful, and just
That's a thing though, when there's not that many resources around, I mean, I think who you really are comes out in that situation. None of us know how we'd react, I don't think. Even like in real life, you don't know how you'd react, what you'd do to stay alive. And not just stay alive, to take care of the people who you care about. Because I mean, people do put weights on put weight on different people's lives. You see.
Yeah. You've got all these people that have weird sort of bug out fantasies, shelters and things like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
they might be confident as hell about how they're going to react when stuff goes down, if stuff ever went down. But I'd still put money on them not acting like they'd planned.
Well, no, I mean, you can never. I mean, generally, Rory, it was me and you who watched a bug out sort of documentary,
It was,
wasn't it, a while
yeah.
ago? And have you noticed how they all plan for very specific things? They don't seem to plan for general event, like general catastrophes and loads of different things. They all go, the world's going to end by a massive earthquake, or the world's going to end by zombies. There's never a zombie earthquake. They never make it true, do they? You know?
That would be horrifying. But yeah, it's always, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and things. And then, yeah, that's never going to happen exactly how you think it will.
That's actually, I just got to say, that's a brilliant idea for a book. One of those guys who's like planning the end of the world, and the world does end, but in the completely wrong way, what they're not expecting, and they're just not prepared for it. I find that would be like a really funny book. I'm gonna write that one down. That's gonna be a comedy I'm gonna do at some point. Where's my pen?
Excellent.
Why do I need a pen? I've got this recorded.
Can you make the ending as ridiculous as possible just to make it even more fun? It's like, I was preparing for a zombie apocalypse, and then it was bugs that ate all of the world's supply of food, and now we're all just kind of hungry.
No. I know the best way to. I know the best way to end it already. Right? It gets to the end. He's sort of by himself. His family are dead. Right? And he's about to kill himself. And as he does it, a gigantic earthquake happens and kills him, just like he was planning against. He survives the zombie apocalypse, and bam, earthquake. I basically like around Yellowstone or something like that, like the volcano or something. Yeah.
I look forward to this.
I think that would be a great comedy book. But anyway, yeah, I think we go a bit off topic.
Yeah. One thing you reminded me of, kind of like, I'm going to bring it up already. A movie with kidnapping and sort of personal apocalypse, Old Boy.
Yes.
Now, what's really good about that, I find, is that all the terrible kind of shit and major kind of
spoilers. Sorry, Barry. I was just in case.
It happens at the start because the very premise is that he's been captured for 14 years, I think it is, or 15.
Yeah,
and
like that, yeah.
You have a very condensed period where he's just broken down as a person, and you've already had a major sort of kind of shift in the way he acts and stuff because he's just been removed from society for so long.
Yeah, but you grasp the amount of time that's passed, don't you?
Yeah, but even though that's really kind of quick, the rest of the movie then goes on to again develop him trying to find his way in the world again.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant movie. I recommend it to anyone.
It kind of, in a heartbeat, it gives you a whole load of shit that happens to him and a whole big way in which he changes. But then still, thereafter that, you've got him still moving on and just kind of trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out what he wants now.
Yeah. It's a very. I was just thinking about the ending. It's a very good book, movie. Jesus. Oh yeah.
Yeah, twists galore as well.
Yeah, it is. Have you seen it, Joy?
I haven't, but I know about it, so I know that something happened, and that something happened that might involve the ingestion of something. We'll just leave it there. We don't even go any further.
See, now people are thinking you're on about soggy biscuits or something.
Oh dear.
The more vague it is, the better. I think.
Everyone sort of thinks the worst, or at least I did anyway. So.
Never write a character that kind of has critical personality developments from games of soggy biscuit. That's not a good premise.
I was in Army Cadets as a boy.
Oh dear.
So do they
I just
do they
I
get
just
into
couldn't get turned on,
thematic-
so I laughed. I don't know what accent that was. I'm sorry. I have no idea. Perhaps I should do my
What happens when they go into
accent.
Tesco? So wait, what happens when they get into Tesco and they walk past the biscuits? Do they just have vivid flashbacks?
All right. I'm not going to sit here and explain on the podcast what Soggy Biscuits is. I feel like we should move on. I regret saying Soggy Biscuits. I'd
If
rather
you're
talk
curious,
about
Google
Dolphins,
it
to be honest.
at your own peril.
We need. I feel like we need a big red button that just says next, so we can start hammering it when stuff gets a bit.
I know, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh dear. So anyway, I'll try and pull it back. So can you guys think of any other sort of things that you need to do with a character? Before I go into sort of the ways that I would build a character myself from the ground up, like things like when you design a character, in my opinion, or generally you'll know this, that one of the most biggest pet peeves when you're watching something is when a character's there and they don't really add anything to the story. So generally, for instance, in my book, if I'm adding someone in, like a new character, I don't just add someone in because of the hell of it. I feel like if I generally think of someone that can sort of add something, someone who can, maybe if you want someone in there who's like a mole, if someone's sort of gonna betray them, or you want someone who's there that the characters can become really close to, and then you can kill off that character or something like that. Something that really sort of pulls the heartstrings and things like that, or someone that really annoys people and like makes them furious, things like that. I feel like one of the worst things in books and stories is when someone's just there and it's like they don't add anything. You know, like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like I'm joking
Well,
about Harry Potter, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
I was gonna say, sometimes, so it depends on the type of genre that you have, because there's this really good bit in, if any of you have ever seen this show called Boston Legal. There's a
I
part
know
in it
Boston
where,
Legal, yeah.
there's a part in it like in the almost like last seasons, and they're on a ranch, and one of the extras, well, something happens, and one of the extras is about to say something, and one of the main characters actually looks at him and is like, "You're an extra, you don't get it a line," and then they keep on going as if they just broke the fourth wall and just pretend that doesn't exist, and then just continues like, what the hell?
Oh dear.
So,
Okay. Is there anything that really annoys you about characters? What you think or things that you like about ways they sort of improve characters and change them throughout a story, things like that?
I don't like it when, I guess kind of similar to the earlier point I made, I don't like it where somebody has to literally describe every aspect about a character from the onset to sell this person. Because I've just read that a few times where just some people seem to just really love setting out this detailed, vivid person, but not doing it in any imaginative way other than telling you about them.
Well, it doesn't feel natural, does it? It's
No,
sort of
I
just
mean-
sit there and, as soon as you see someone, you don't sit there and go, he has brown boots and all this sort of stuff, and go really into detail about the person. You go,
Yeah.
and like explain all
Because
this, no, I think that's
when
true.
you
I think
just
what
pick
you
up-
do in a book, you should slowly add these different bits of detail in as you go. It shouldn't all be in one big lump. It should be, he had like a curved teeth and things. Something that really stands out when you first see them.
Yeah.
Something that they can so they can make a picture in their head. But you sort of want them to do it a bit themselves. And then as it goes through the story, you can slowly add personality traits, and then the people basically learn it themselves, like you were saying earlier. I think that's really key.
Yeah, when you've got, say, you've got a mannerism for a person that isn't apparent, and then all of a sudden, their mannerism starts becoming more obvious because it repeats itself. But then the one thing you just don't want to do is explicitly state, like, my character, person X would often talk this way, or whatever. Just you don't have to spell it out for people.
No, exactly. Yeah,
Just
people
let
aren't
your
that
character
dumb.
be a character,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
I've just seen it happen a few times, and it just winds me up.
yeah. It takes you out of the story. That's what it is. It really does. It sort of draws you out. you feel like you're being described a person instead of like meeting a person. If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
It's like I don't think there's many authors and things, and I mean this is the same sort of thing happens in movies as well. It's just a lot more obvious in books. But
Yeah.
I think some writers are really good at this sort of super descriptive style of writing. Like have you read any of the Game of Thrones books?
I haven't. No.
Well, he basically just goes into lots and lots of detail, but he
I
does
have
it in
heard.
such
Yeah.
he does it in such a way that
You're
say
not bothered
you're
by it.
no, but he'll mention like for pages and pages basically he'll sort of talk about this slippery surface on the ground and stuff, and then when you actually finally come to the big battle that's based on this surface, you sort of understand why these things are happening, and sort of he'll sort of go into detail, but he sort of builds it up in such a way that you can basically just like visualize that land. I mean, it can feel tedious at times. Sometimes you're just like, all right, get across the bloody drawbridge, go. You know, it's just like
Yeah.
you want to skip ahead sometimes, but I think he does it in such a good way that it's actually all right to read. It's actually really good to
Paints
read.
a really vivid picture in a pleasing way rather than just a get on with it way.
Yeah, but then obviously if a lot of people try and do that and try and copy his style, then they're just going to end up. It's just going to look like bloated and horrible.
Yeah,
It's
it's
over descriptive, like overly descriptive. I try and do I do little bits of like description in my writing, but I don't go too in depth. I sort of as you say with mine, I kind of like to sort of slowly give people information, and I like sort of they're picking the information up during like action scenes and things like that, and they'll learn about characters that way. I don't want to sit there and just explain everything about the person.
yeah.
But important things like we talked about last week about mention something that he's going to say if he's got a certain weapon or something, mention that he's an archer or something like that. If he's going to be using it soon, you don't want him to suddenly just have a bow or something like that. Stuff that's important to the story. I mean, that's a bit of a trivial example, but stuff that's really important to the story should be mentioned, but you don't have to go into like blocks and blocks of detail about it. And then you can explain more when he uses it or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on that, Joy?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, bravo, bravo.
I know.
I think I think the problem that I have, well, is that most of my medium consumption is unfortunately through either comic books or
Why is that
television or
unfortunately?
movies or other. Well, because the books that I read, they're usually more they're not fictional, so they don't get into that much description. Like, if you're going to talk about
Are you trying to tell me that non-fiction books don't go into detail?
some of them they really don't. Some of them, trust me, they
No,
need to
it
describe more
all
basically.
depends. But I mean, it depends what you're looking like reading. I mean, if you're reading biographies and things, generally they're quite good with detail. I mean, everyone has different writing styles, or at least the people they pay to write for them have different writing styles.
A very interesting one I read was are you aware of Daniel Tammet?
Daniel Tammet? No, I don't think so.
He's a guy in England with savant syndrome, and he's on the autism spectrum, but he's actually really high functioning, enough so much that he can write a book and he can hold a job and things like that. So he's got this incredibly wired mind and such. Anyway, he wrote a biography about his life and mainly about his conditions and things like that. But that was kind of like an interesting insight into quirks he's picked up, and because he wrote it, you're getting his personality from his words and everything, which is quite good. I know that's not quite, setting a story out or anything like that, because
still
it's
really
him writing about
interesting,
himself. Yeah, definitely. Just that you could pick up so much character from the way it was written.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. And how does he sort of describe others as well in his book? Because obviously I'm not really too down in the know with that sort of condition, but I'm guessing that is it the sort of social aspect that's quite difficult for them?
Daniel is quite decent social-wise. I mean, I think he wrote his book when he was in his second relationship or something.
Mm. Hmm.
What you tend to kind of find, what I found interesting was just his mental and emotional relationship with things like numbers and
Yeah.
colours, and how he'd sort of talk really fondly of, say, like the number 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or he'd just,
But
in his words,
they see
obsess
things
over
differently,
something that
don't
other
they? Yeah.
people wouldn't obsess with, and it was a really good read. I think there's a documentary out there for him that's on YouTube or something like
I
that.
know I've seen some things like that where people associate numbers with colours and
Yeah,
Yeah.
things like that.
yeah, synesthesia.
Yeah, that's
He
really quite cool.
he basically suffers from the same conditions as Kim Peek, Rain Man.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Rain Man was a fictional adaptation of Real Man's condition and life and
Yeah.
stuff.
We saw that documentary as well, didn't we? Actually, when I was in Hull, about Rain Man, the real
Oh,
guy.
yeah, the real Rain Man
Yeah.
documentary. Yeah,
Not the movie.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you know that movie documentary that was fake.
Yeah, that one.
Mm.
But yeah, as I say, it was weird kind of being able to tell a lot about a person just by the way they wrote things, what mattered
Yeah,
to them
well,
and such.
yeah, exactly. You sort of see what they're trying to
Yeah.
convey, what they're trying to
So
get
I'm
across.
guessing you could try and mimic something like that if you're writing in the first person, which would be interesting.
That's one thing you don't see that much of. Um, you don't see that much first-person fantasy, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it easy to write in first
I think
person, but I don't like doing it.
was
So,
is the Dark Tower series first person?
yes, I know
And what about
the Dredgen files are.
Dresden Files? What about Song of Ice and Fire? Isn't that first person as well?
What one?
Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, basically.
No, that's Game of
Yeah.
Thrones is third person omniscient. It's where you can go inside people's heads, but you flip. You're a head hopper basically. You have loads of different people's point of views.
Ah,
Um, it's
or tricky.
with that, I think it's scene by scene or chapter by chapter,
Yeah, I
depending
think it's
on.
chapter by chapter.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I need to read this book.
I think it's third person omniscient anyway, because you get third person limited, which is the most common. But we can always
Yep.
talk about uh, point of views another time.
Yeah.
It can get quite tricky.
Yeah.
Next button!
But yeah, that's another thing actually about character development. When you're sort of doing, I mean, we'll focus more on sort of first person in it. But hold on.
What?
Um.
Gonna
but
have to
anyway,
impose a ban.
anyway, so with things like when you're creating a character, you should consider whether they're your main character, whether or not you're going to be inside their head, things like that. Because you can obviously add all this information. If you're doing it first person, they get to know this character, they get to know everything, all the stuff inside their head, right? It's one of the reasons why things like the Hunger Games, I can't really get into that much. I don't like Katniss. I don't like her. She's like a teenage girl, and she's quite strong and stuff and confident in that. But I can't stand her. So I mean, that's gonna happen. I'm guessing a lot of teenage girls really love that book. I mean, I know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
It's just not really for me. But you can sort of give a lot of information using first person. So the point of view of that is actually really important as to how you develop the character. You see. If it's people on the outside, you've got to do a lot more work on the outside, and because people can't read inside their head. Then you can't give that information. So you've got to sort of do all this sort of outside stuff. You need to make their actions quite obvious. But that's what I mean. Like you sort of do these little actions as you go on, and that's how you make it clear. Because like I tend to write in third person limited, which in one chapter you only follow one person, right? Whereas in third-person omniscient, you can go into different people's heads in paragraph to
I see.
paragraph if you want. You see?
Yeah, so for a large chunk, you're just with one person. I see.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm trying to think.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I know of a few like that. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
one that I was
I think
like that as well.
third-person omniscient is actually really hard to do. Um, hang on. You guys talk about something. I'm looking at something.
That was very specific.
Oh dear.
Things to talk about. Hmm.
God.
Come on, guys. I don't
I,
have to.
I'm surprised we've not actually mentioned like character development in games and stuff like that, because of course they're glorified stories.
Well, they're
Oh,
stories where
yeah.
they can jump out of a story and do some action for a little while, and then
Yeah.
it's funny. Everyone tries to a lot. Well, I don't do it anymore. I used to. I try and skip the story. I'll be like, come on, I want to play, and then you start really
Why would you
enjoying
do
these things.
that?
I don't know. I'm awful. I just like it's especially things
I
like
did. Yeah.
what was the one I was playing? I can't remember. It's like a hack and slash. Not done 18.
Darksiders?
Well, I love Darksiders. That game's brilliant, but it wasn't that
Yeah.
one. It was I can't remember what it was called now. It was like a modern version of an older game.
Yeah, right. One game that does characters really quite interestingly well. Have either of you two played Thomas Was Alone?
No.
No.
I'm not going to go massively into detail. It's just an indie game, but
Mhm.
it's a platformer, and the only characters you play as are just coloured rectangles of different sizes and shapes.
Right.
And you have a narrator talking about each rectangle as if it's a person. You know, this is
Yeah.
Thomas, this is Claire. Super Claire could do anything, and just the way the narrator talks about these people and
Mm.
stuff, even though you've got no visual representation of them, you've got no kind of
You
real
feel
thing
that connection with them
connect
then.
with. Yeah, it's just a really good way that that's kind of construed.
And I'm guessing this information slowly built up. It's not just all burst at you. You sort of, as you go on, you
Yeah,
get more and more
just
information. And
every level you go on, they start meeting each other and they develop a little that way. They get split off from the others and they develop so on here and there. Just every level is just narrated for a little bit of time or when significant things happen. And you build up quite a good image of these characters that are
Yeah.
essentially just coloured rectangles.
you wouldn't really think that you're going to
Wow.
build up a rapport with a rectangle, but I mean
Yeah,
that just goes for the good writing, really, doesn't it? And like the narration, it's got to be good.
Yeah, especially that it was all purely narrated. I mean, occasionally the narrator would talk about them, you know, like, whippy, he would think, or, you know, something like,
Yeah. So he'd go inside their head a little bit.
yeah, he'd talk a bit more direct about them,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was always purely from a narration point of view. I don't think the characters ever interacted. They were just
Right.
fixed
Ah.
blocks.
No, that sounds pretty
I was gonna say
interesting.
with video game characters, there are two that I have in mind that as the story progresses, you actually see a change in their perspectives and everything else that I really love. The first one is I forgot his name, but actually you can put me there. Shepard from Mass Effect, the
Mhm.
guy in Spec Ops: The Line, and
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid because Hideo Kojima is just insane.
Wait, Metal Gear
Yeah.
Solid Silver Snake, whatever his name is.
Yes, whichever one of those characters. It's because at the start, I'll take like Snake Eater for instance. At the start, starts off as this like soldier who is just following orders and everything else, and by the story that actually changes him and everything else, he ends up becoming the big boss in the end. The guy who rebels against from the establishment is like, you see what
So,
you guys
yeah,
have done?
so-
You made me kill my only friend.
As the story
Spoilers, sorry.
progresses, he questions his orders, questions what's happened,
Yeah.
and then basically goes over himself. I mean, that's not that's good character development, brilliant character development. I think actually,
Yeah.
I think Rory was right. I mean, I think games are a really good example. At least a lot of them. I mean, they're as much an art form as anything else nowadays.
Yeah.
You've got kind of weaker examples, I guess, such as open worldy games like Fallout and Skyrim, where everyone else is a character, but you're not really, and I don't think it'd necessarily work if you were a character. But
No,
you've
I don't
you've got
really.
that problem that you don't want to always kind of tell the person sitting down and playing a game, this is you, this is what motivates you, go and do it. It's sometimes hard to make
Yeah.
that work. And you played Bioshock Infinite, didn't you?
I did, yes, yes.
I think that
Yeah.
kind of did it really well, where it kind of made you be inside a character, just because he interacted with the was it Elizabeth so much,
Yes, yeah.
and even though you made very minor decisions from it or whatnot, you still had the excellent kind of voice acting on top of what actions you were doing. You were more
Mm.
along for the ride than
Oh, yeah,
directing
yeah.
a person. But if you are directing a person, such as in an open world game, it's a bit harder to give them a character and make it
Yeah,
work well.
yeah. Another thing I was thinking about, similar to that, as you were saying, these sort of interaction things. Do you remember the game like Heavy Rain and
Yeah.
Broken
Yeah.
Sword, obviously, and things? Those games I really like. I like that. That's one thing that games can do, that interactive thing. Because the character development in those cases, it's different depending on the choices that you make.
Yeah.
There are some books like that as well, where you go a different route. Generally, they're sort of on the computer and things, but I don't know if you've ever seen them. And they're basically, you've got all the different pages, and Joy, they do a lot of comic books like this nowadays. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but
Really?
they do some comic books. And basic
I
idea is you have start and the end, and well, multiple ends, and as you go through, you just go, what do I want to happen? And you go that way, and then you just make these different choices as you go.
Yeah.
It's
Just the
really good. I can't
choose your
remember what they're called, but yeah.
Is it Choose Your Own Adventure?
Choose Your Own Adventure, I think, yeah. And obviously there's books, comics, and obviously games as well.
Yeah, I love those things as a kid.
Yeah, no, great fun, aren't they?
I think I've got a box somewhere in my room of like 10.
Mm. I actually think something like that would be a lot of really good research for a writer, because obviously you have all these different things, and if you can see that if there's a sort of natural progression that people are choosing, and if they like certain things to happen, and they get more into it by certain routes for it, I mean, you'd have to do a lot of work to do that. But I think it's quite interesting. I don't know. I mean, I really like that. I really do. I think they're great fun.
Now then, you've just slightly reminded me. I'm gonna. Yeah, I think I could be wrong. I think there's this popular tool that's gaining a lot of traction called Twine or something for making sort of interactive storytelling adventure games.
Right.
Kind of like Choose Your Own Adventure books, but on PC only. I think it's gaining a lot of traction at the moment, so you might want to look into that sometime.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll have a look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll send you a link after this.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we've talked about that. All right. So I think the last bit I've got in my notes is what I call my character building dossier, or my. Basically, I have in Scrivener, which is what I use as I keep plugging. I'm not getting money for it, but I keep plugging it. Is the tool I use to. No, well, no, but I keep I use this tool to write with. Really good. You can buy one license and use it on all your computers. I got it on my laptop, on my PC, and my one at work, which I don't actually write on, but
yeah, it's there.
Not that much anyway. And yeah, so anyway, you have these things. You can add all your chapters, split up into scenes. You can have all your character development, all that sort of stuff, and scene development, world development, all your research you want. But the thing with the character development is each character you add, it gives you this sort of basic template with information, like a few things you can write about. But I've got this sort of huge sort of dossier of stuff that I go through each time I create a character. The number one thing I ask, which we were discussing this earlier, I don't actually think I mentioned it, is the one thing I ask myself is, why am I adding this character? It's like I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that the character fits the story, there's a reason for him. You're not just adding a character because you think, I want to spruce things up, I want to add someone new. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing. And then I'm going to go through a few of like the different things I have on the. So see, I think you've got it on the side, haven't you?
Yeah.
So the first thing for me is, what is this guy's goal, or guy or girl, sorry, or creature or whatever? I shouldn't be so chauvinist. So what is this person's goal or motivation? So what do they want to achieve from life or this quest or whatever it is they're doing, that sort of thing. So I like to write about that, and I go, what are their goals and aims, and what are the, basically what do I want to get out? Not just what they want. What do I want to get out of them in the book, or whatever you're writing. And then obviously you need things like their age, their name, their age, their race. Where they're from. Oh, and race can be obviously elves, dwarves, all that sort of thing, or if it's like a normal story, it could be white, black, all that sort of thing. Just basically where they're from and their ethnicity and stuff. Then obviously the homeland, skills that they have. This can be anything from the fact that they're a good woodworker or they're a good fighter, stuff like that. So you don't have to go into too much detail, but sort of basic sort of things. How much family they've got, and whether or not these families are alive and things, because this can play a role when you're developing a character. You know, I think it's very important to sort of say. I mean, if everyone, it's like you guys were saying earlier, if someone's entire family has died, that's going to affect them. I think that was your Job story, Joy.
Yeah.
Basically, if everyone's family dies, that's going to affect them. So you want to mention whether these families are alive, how they've died, and how they're sort of linked. And then it's the same thing, not just family. You want to have significant others. And I sort of always class that as people who are important in their life, whether it's good or bad, really. Because you can have someone who you really love, and if something was to happen to them, it would really sort of like basically just destroy you, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be someone who's really evil, and all you want to do is destroy them, you know? So there's that sort of different thing. You want to sort of mention that. Don't mention anyone who they don't know or they don't care about, because it doesn't really matter. But someone who's important to them, you should mention that.
Yeah.
And then I go to the other section, which is physical characteristics. So that's height, weight. I've mentioned race as well. Again, I guess that's important in here because obviously with elves and things like that, generally they have a generic sort of height and things. In mine, I have a description of elves. They'll have, say, they're usually quite tall compared to humans. So I have that all written up, basic specifics. But these are things more how they're different than the average elf or whatever like that. So eye color, hair color, accessories, stuff that's important to them. In my book, the Queen has a thing called the Amulet of Harmony, which is a very important bit of kit. It's actually the name of the book, so it's quite important. Things like that, something that is going to impact the story, something that you want to mention. It's like we were saying before, where you don't want to mention every little thing about the person, but the things that are really important that are going to be brought up in the story pretty soon and stuff like that, you want to sort of keep that in there. Something that's really important. What weapons they use, if they use weapons. They could be a pacifist, I don't know. Maybe I should add a pacifist into my book, because there isn't any at the moment. I'll just go through some of these quicker. So little habits they have, you know, little things like someone might bite their nails and stuff, I don't know. Dress sense, whether it's smart, tatty, all that sort of stuff. Armor, whether they're healthy, so athletic, all that sort of stuff, or really unhealthy, big fat slob. If they have any other hobbies, something that sort of maybe they like gardening and stuff that sort of that would actually make sense. If for instance someone's injured and they need to go find a herb that they know will help the wound, why would someone know that? Because it's probably because they're a botanist or something like that. Like that sort of stuff, really good to have in. If they have any sort of speech pattern, like a southern drawl, like that, maybe not like that, but similar. And then other things like scars, you know, think like sort of Harry Potter and whether or not they don't have a nose. Yeah, stuff that's different to normal people of their race. You see, so like if they've been blinded or deformed or something like that, or they haven't got a leg. That's stuff you sort of add in there. Stuff that's actually a key.
You're not going to talk about a short dwarf.
No. I mean, you mentioned that his height, but whether or not, because obviously dwarves are short normally. You may mention that he's a strangely tall dwarf.
Yeah.
Something that's out of the ordinary more than anything. And then I got another, bloody hell, I got loads of this. I just realised how much work I do for each character. But I think this is very important. If you just want to get all this information from the start and what you want from the character and all these different little bits and traits and how they look, what they do in certain situations, I think it's really important because then when you're writing it, you basically know the character. You see, I
It
think that's
forces yourself to think of a person.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of just a
Yeah.
name and basically just a empty image in your mind, because you always have an idea of the person, but you want to know more. You want to know who they are, why they are, and what they want to do with life. You know.
Yeah.
So the next bit is intellectual, mental, and personality attributes. So that's what sort of education they have, and that goes hand in hand with intelligence. So I mean, you could have sort of a really sort of powerful military strategist versus a guy or a goblin who's basically made mud pies and eaten worms most of his life. Like there's that sort of thing will sort of define who they are and what they're capable of. You can't have someone who's a complete silly boy sort of commanding an entire army because it's not going to happen. You know, no one's going to listen to them. They're just going to make silly. Or it could happen, but they're just going to make really poor decisions. But that sort of stuff sort of filters in. Another one from that perspective is how they view themselves. Because obviously, as we all know, this happens in real life. This can be completely different. So I could view myself as this sort of really strong, heroic sort of guy who would always jump in and help anyone and something. And then other people see me, well, he's a bit quiet, you know, he doesn't really say that much, or he doesn't really help out when he's needed. But in your mind, it could be completely different, you see. But yeah, so basically you want to say how you view yourself, or how the character views himself, and how people view the character. Because that's a big thing. Because that would sort of change, where he could act all he could act all cocky and sort of stuff like this, and people are pretty much like, why is he acting like that? He's basically a nobody, you know, that sort of thing. Like people sometimes get that.
I was going to say a lot of the comedy in Always Sunny seems to rely on that.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's great. Yeah. Where, like Dennis, where he thinks he's this amazing, gorgeous sex god, and then basically he's just.
Yeah, there's those episodes like where they call his face fat, and he just goes to extreme measures to make sure that his face is not fat.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah,
I've never seen. It is Always Sunny. I know that I should, but never had the time.
Sorry, did you want to carry on being in this podcast?
Huh?
By next week, watch it. Have you got Netflix?
Okay.
Write it down. Get a reminder.
But yeah, just for sort of like a quick explanation, every character is an asshole, but they don't think they are. Essentially.
Yeah, and one of the guys who created the show, his basic idea was he wanted the characters just get worse and worse as the show goes on. Because you know how a lot of characters, like I think his explanation, Rory, was Friends, wasn't it? Where at the beginning of the show they weren't really that good looking, and then the more and more series that went on, they all became really pretty, and they'd already been working out at the gym.
Partly because of the budget as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're all getting loads of money, and they can afford to work out. They're not all stretched and stuff, and they all like get boob jobs and stuff. But he wanted it the opposite. He wanted everyone to just not just physically get worse, but like emotionally and as a person as well. He wanted them to sort of. But that's another good example of characters changing over time. I mean, they weren't nicer to begin with, but they got worse, a lot worse.
Yeah, God, yes.
Yeah, but it's all for fun. It's all funny. It's sort of the whole point is you're not meant to like these people. You're supposed to be like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that. Like, why is Danny DeVito crawling across the ground covered in lard, acting like a worm or something? You don't know, but it makes fun. When you see it, you'll understand, my friend.
Okay, I will watch an episode tonight before I sleep and be like, okay, so this is weird.
It's brilliant. Just start from the beginning, and then go and watch the Dennis system.
I think that's a key turning point in Dennis being an awful human being.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite. That's my favorite episode. I think it always that one in the boat episode. But we don't want to go into the implications.
Yeah. Yes. Precisely.
Anyway, we'll hold on. We'll get back to it. Yeah. So what were we on? We're on emotional characteristics now. Oh no, we weren't. We weren't. We were still on the intellectual, mental, and personality attributes. Yeah. So we got how they view themselves, how they view others, whether or not the character is ruled more by logic or emotion. Because some people are very driven by their emotions, and that's what guides them. And they also, if they're upset by something, they might not do something. Whereas a logical person would say, it doesn't really matter how I feel about it. This is the right thing to do. It makes sense. And I mean, there can be a mix of both, but it's good to sort of put a ratio, at least, sort of the amount of which way they sway, because that can sort of, during a story, that can sort of guide you as to what decisions they'd make. As I say, each character you have as a writer or a director, a writer or whatever, sort of somebody who's developing stuff, needs to know what someone would do at a certain time. And generally, you shouldn't really have to think about it because you know the characters in and out. And that's what this sort of list is doing, really. It's helping you build that sort of overview of the person in your own mind. And I think that's quite important. And another important one is obviously what shames them and what they're ashamed of. So stuff that would sort of make them feel embarrassed, or stuff they've done in the past that they're ashamed of. And I think an example I said earlier when we were discussing it was if they're a member of a tribe and they gave secrets to a different tribe, or slept with the daughter of another tribe, something like that. Something that, like, I mean, I suppose Romeo and Juliet's a good example. How he betrayed that. Obviously, he wasn't ashamed of it, but someone could be if Romeo was banished, and he sort of felt ashamed about that. And you could use that. So if people mention it, he might get angry. All that sort of thing. You can use that, and that's good stuff to have. And then emotional characteristics. So I got their strengths, their weaknesses, whether or not they're introverts or extroverts, emotional control, so how they react to things like anger, sadness, loss, which we were on about earlier about the grief and stuff like that. Another one obviously is how they react to conflict. So something that's either not going their way, a big event, like suddenly someone jumps out, if you expect them to go guns blazing, or whether you think they're going to think about it, back up sort of thing, or run away, silly things like that. That's quite important. And how they're, obviously, again, same with that, how they react to change. What frightens them, I mean, that's simple enough. Someone could be scared of spiders, I mean, that could even be brought up, something silly like that. Or if they're scared of being locked in a room, like claustrophobia, things like that are very important. Like me, I'm not scared of being in a small room, but I'm scared of being trapped. I panic if I get trapped, which is the worst thing to do, by the way, if you get trapped, because your chest gets bigger. But that all comes from when I was a kid, when I was in underneath a bed, and for some reason I just got stuck, and I just panicked, and my chest got bigger, and I couldn't get out, and it was like an hour until I got out. Worst time of my life, I tell you. But that sort of thing is really good for a character, because if it happens during the story, they can react in a sort of way that sort of, to some people, it would seem really like, what on earth are they doing, sort of thing. But to them, it could be really important, and it's something you could sort of hint at earlier in the story, and then just have it happen. You see, so I think that sort of thing's quite good. Are they judgmental people? Are they generous? Are they stingy? Are they polite? Are they rude? That sort of thing. And then I got spiritual characteristics. In certain things, it could be normal religion, or it could be a fictitious religion, or sort of spiritual sort of side of things. So whether they are or not, if they are, what the type is, what their beliefs are based on that. Is it a big part of their life, or is it sort of those sort of people who go to church on Sunday but don't actually really follow any of it? It's just sort of just routine, or is it something they really believe in and they base their life and guide themselves based on that, really? And I guess then it's like we were talking about earlier, it's the role in the story. So if they're the main antagonist, if they're a protagonist, if they're used just for a plot device, like I was saying earlier, of like Gandalf and things and stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty much what I do for every single character that I add in. I mean, some minor characters I wouldn't, if they're not really that important. But anyone who I'm going to give a name to and actually have as part of the story, they need to have all that background, in my opinion. But then again, I'm quite a detail-oriented kind of guy anyway. But that's my 2 cents on that. You guys still alive?
Well, yes. I was gonna say, with the spirituality one, right? Actually started thinking about it earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Has any of you guys ever watched or read Wanted?
Wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the book.
Yeah. Remember how like it actually makes an emphasis to point out that Mr. Richter's, like the main bad guy, was actually a priest, and then he died, and he saw that there was nothing, and then he just kind of flipped.
Yeah,
Him, in terms of like a character development story-wise, would be amazing to write, because you'd have to actually chart the progression of like how he slowly lost his faith, because even though he stopped believing, the faith would still be there, and it would take a lot of pouring away and a lot of acts to get all of that faith away, and for him to be like, screw it.
No, exactly. A lot has to happen for someone to lose faith.
Yeah.
The whole point of faith is that it's blind. You see, you don't expect that. You're not looking for something to happen. It's faith for a reason. And I mean, it's people like me. I mean, I'm not a physicist, but I believe in science, and I believe in what people who are a lot more intelligent than I am say. I mean, they could be saying complete bullcrap, but I've got a leap of faith. And that's true. And I mean, if I was to find that it was all a lie and it was a government conspiracy, I shouldn't let my cousin Tyrrell hear this. He'll start talking to me for ages. He's a conspiracy theorist, by the way. Yes, I mean, it would take a lot for me to actually believe that all these things that I believed were fact were indeed a lie. It's the same as religion to me. Because I mean, you've got to admit, we do take a leap of faith with a lot of things. I mean, sure, we think, oh yeah, that sounds like it's probably right, but we don't know, do we? Really, at the end of the day, have you ever been out? Have you ever been in space? Have you ever been, have you ever been to the Large Hadron Collider? Do you know all these things? But we take a leap of faith.
Yes, I do. Definitely.
I knew you were an alien.
With all my buckets of money. Yeah. Yeah, he knows.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're actually running over.
Yeah, just a bit.
Alright guys, I think that was actually quite productive anyway. I went on a little bit of a rant about my my dossier thing, but I think that's a good way of building characters. I don't know if you guys think the same. I think it all depends on how you write it. But I'm very detailed, outline, sort of make everything sort of verbose, loads of information, and then when I get to the actual writing, I don't actually have to think because I know the characters already. And some people don't like to do. Some people like to base it on their emotions. Some people like to just write and go through, like we were saying last week, the linear writing or the writing more of an outline, like the way I do it. It all depends on how you do it. But then again, when I wrote the when I wrote the part of the short story that I've written already, I wrote outlines for that as well and wrote sort of scene sort of info. But I didn't go into too much detail. I wanted to sort of do it a bit more natural as I went on. So yeah, I mean, it all depends on how you write things like that. But I think that's good information what I've given anyway. I think the most important thing that we said today really is you can't just info dump, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Info dump is not good. You can't just go, this is all this is this person, take all this information, this is what you should believe all this. As Rory said, as I've said, as you said, Joy, you need to slowly give the information and let people make their own mind up.
True. And that is the main thing, people. Remember.
Exactly. Wait, that wasn't a joke. Alright then, well, I think that's the time. Yeah, thanks guys. We'll do the same thing next week. Hopefully dead on 9, not whatever time we started. Yeah, alright guys.
Okay.
Ciao.
Au revoir.
By the way, Rory, are you muted? Can't hear you. Rory.
Yep, I think it was muted.
Yeah, he's totally. I was wondering why he wasn't talking. Hang on. Oh. All right, guys. I'm stopping now.